On today's show, we're starting a special three-part series, Navigating Life After Loss. The first episode is going to focus on what to do in the first week after losing a spouse, when emotions are raw and decisions feel overwhelming. Welcome to another episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast, where we want to empower and educate women to live your retirement on your terms. I'm your host, Eric Blake, practicing retirement planner with over 25 years of experience, founder of Blake Wealth Management, and I would not be the man I am today without the women in my life. This episode is for those navigating the very first days, where the fog, the phone calls, the decisions, it's a time filled with emotion, but it's also one that carries immediate financial and legal responsibilities. We're also going to be offering a free resource to accompany this episode and the two that will follow, Navigating Life After Loss, a comprehensive guide for the newly widowed. It's going to be available as a free download, a downloadable PDF, and a summary of this episode. You can also find it, of course, at the simplyretirementpodcast.com or on your favorite podcast platform. And don't forget, if you do have a question, a topic idea, or if you're facing a specific retirement challenge and you'd like to hear that covered on an upcoming episode, visit the simplyretirementpodcast.com/ask Eric. Joining me once again on this episode is Wendy McConnell. Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. We have some big news coming up. This is Tuesday, the 29th, and my daughter is going to be joining our practice on August 1st, which is this Friday.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're very excited about that. We give Dawn, who's kind of been handling our operations role, relationship manager role, kind of let her focus a little bit more on some of the marketing stuff that we're doing, but also spend a little more time being grandma.
Yeah, so you're expanding.
We are. So it's really exciting. She's got some experience in what we do, but she's excited and we're excited. So it's a special time.
A win-win.
It is.
All right.
Well, so on to today's episode. Again, we're talking about what needs to happen within the first few days. You'd hate to think that anything has to happen, but unfortunately, there are some challenges that we face when we lose a spouse or somebody very dear to us. And of course, we know grief is exhausting. There is no playbook on how to feel, but there is one for what to prioritize. With existing clients, I reassure them that we're going to walk beside them through every step. If you're not working with a firm like ours, this is when you want to make sure you lean on your friends, your family, or professionals who understand what's coming, because it is a challenge to say the least. So
one of the first things we have to remember is to call our financial advisor.
That is one of the things that's on the list. Yeah. So, and that's basically what I want to do. I want to share some things that, you're not going to remember all these. That's part of why we're going to be sharing this guide. But it's just things to be aware of. I'd also say, this is going to apply to 90% of the situations out there. There's going to be some that are going to say, "Why I didn't have to do that," or "I don't think you really need to do that," or I had to do this. There's going to be certain things like that are going to be outliers. But in general, this is going to apply to, kind of 90% of the situations. It's also, of course, going to apply to where it's not a spouse. And again, it may be a parent, it may be somebody close to you, and you might be in that role of trying to help navigate some of these issues. So that's really what this is for, is just to outline, okay, here's kind of what the next steps are. Here's what to think about, what to be aware of. So hopefully you don't get caught by surprise.
Hopefully.
So the first thing we're going to talk about is, you hate to talk about this because it's one of those administrative things, but when your spouse passes away, one of the first things you're going to do is request copies of the death certificate. And we actually typically recommend somewhere between 20 to 30 copies, depending on what type of accounts you have, what type of assets you have. And really, you want to order more than what you need, right? Or what you think you might need.
20 to 30 sounds like a lot, though. Is that typical?
It is. Well, because you never know who's going to ask for one. So if you're thinking about if you've got multiple bank accounts, obviously there's some people that you maybe only have a joint account and a savings account, but some people have, I've got an account for this particular goal or this particular expense, or I've got an account for my property taxes. I've got this account and that account. But it might be also if both spouses have an IRA or Roth IRAs or all these different types of accounts, they'll start adding up much quicker than what you realize. And you might even run into situations where, maybe a utility, a particular bill, that maybe it's only in the spouse's name.
And a copy won't suffice. You need like original.
Certified copy is basically what we're talking about.
Certified copy. Okay, gotcha.
So you get the one death certificate, but then you get certified copies. Now, one of the big keys here is typically the funeral home, wherever these services might be held, or whoever's assisting you with this, Typically, they can help with that process, and it's usually at a lower cost and much less hassle than having to order them later. So that's the other also part of it is why I say order more than you think you might need,
Right.
because it's a bigger hassle down the road to have to go back and order more later from your county or whatever, whatever the authority might be in your particular case.
Okay.
Now we're going to talk about this in a little bit as well, but they're also, if it is a funeral home, they're also going to be they're going to be required to notify Social Security of the deaths as well, and we'll talk about why that's important in just a little bit. But there's other two things kind of right off the bat that you'll want to be aware of. Also, just to your point, one of the things I always tell our clients is that there's other firms that may be like this as well, where we might request an original copy of the death certificate, but once we're done with what we need to do with it, we would also return it. So that is
Okay.
something to keep in mind as well.
Got it.
Obviously, one of the things you're also going to do is make funeral arrangements or memorial arrangements, depending on what the deceased's wishes were. You make sure you're notifying close family and friends. You also, it's one of those, again, you don't want to think about this, but it's the time you want to start trying to figure out, and you're making sure you know where your will and your estate planning documents are. And that's where it might be reaching out to your attorney, reaching out to your financial advisor if they happen to have a copy of those documents. But you want to start gathering some of these important documents. And one of the things I'll touch on with the guide that we're going to be sharing is not only is it going to walk you through these different items, the things to do in the first week, the first month, the first year, but there's also a section we've included in the back where it's going to help you gather these details. It's going to let you outline who are the professionals that are in my life, who are the my doctors, my CPA, my financial advisor, my attorneys, where are my important documents. So it's actually going to help you organize some of this as well. Again, depending on the circumstances, if you actually, it's great to have this information gathered in advance. But if you're in the middle of it, it's also a way you can start again, just trying to put some stuff down so you can get it out there on paper and start helping you work through some of these issues.
Right. Okay.
But some of the professionals that you're going to want to reach out to, again, obviously your estate planning attorney. Hopefully you have one. We're going to talk about why that's important here in just a bit, but it might be a probate attorney, somebody who can help with probate, the probate process. Again, your financial advisor, your CPA, anybody that you think should be informed early on in the process.
Okay.
One of the things that people don't think about also is the arranging care for dependents and pets. If it's a younger individual and they have a young family, or it's maybe you're older but you have somebody you're responsible for, making sure you've arranged, if you're going to be having to handle, you actually going through the grief process, number one, but dealing with a lot of these issues, make sure somebody's taking care of your pets. So things like those that are just kind of those small details, but actually are very important.
Right.
So there's some of the initial steps that we think about. Then we start thinking about, some of the institutions again that we have to notify. Touched on Social Security earlier, but you're gonna, again, if it's a funeral home is required to notify Social Security if they are made aware of an individual's passing. But that's also where you might potentially go ahead and apply for what's called there's a death benefit, a $255 death benefit that you maybe do, especially if it's a spouse. That's a form SSA 8. You actually have 2 years, but obviously we never know what the circumstances are, what the urgency is from a financial perspective. So that's why I put it in this first week area, that once they've been notified, if you have the opportunity or it's an urgent situation where you want to go and apply for that benefit, if the money is needed, just be aware that you are eligible for the benefit, number one, the $255, but there is an application process that you have to go through.
Okay. So is there a fee? Is there like a $255 fee?
No. It's you file form SS88.
Okay.
And that's what there's going to be some documentation you're going to have to provide, those types of things in order to show, yes, I'm eligible for that $255, but it is a $255 lump sum all at once.
Okay.
Benefit.
No reason to wait. Just go ahead.
No reason to wait. Again, you have up to 2 years to apply. If again, some people just didn't know it's out there. Again, it's not a huge amount, but again, depending on the circumstances, every little bit may count. Then we talk about, if the spouse was a veteran, making sure that you reach out to the VA. If there's eligibility for burial assistance or other types of survivor benefits that you might be eligible for, obviously that's something that you want to do. If the spouse was working, obviously you want to contact their employer, not only about notifying them of the passing, but also in terms of benefits, final paycheck, all those types of issues that, again, you just don't think about immediately, that can become big issues down the road if you're not aware of it. So making sure that you notify their employer. Notifying financial institutions. And there's going to be some people that are going to argue with me about this, but there's going to be some reasons why you want to at least think about this. But your banks, your credit unions, your investment firms, mainly to protect your accounts, because you don't want to end up with any type of unauthorized use, because you're in the middle of grieving, you're focusing on other things. It's a time right for people taking advantage of it. And depending on what
Okay.
access you have given to others with your accounts, you want to be really careful about this. So again, notifying institutions that, hey, my spouse has passed, and what are the next steps I need to take.
Okay. So basically just making sure you're the only authorized user
Right.
on those accounts.
Right.
Okay.
And I hate to tell these horror stories, but it was a real story where we had a client that her husband passed away. And he was in his early 60s. He had just started Social Security. All kinds of background information, of course, as there typically is, but he had created a separate account for his Social Security deposits that, for whatever reason, he put his brother as a joint owner of. And of course, as soon as he passed, the brother completely withdrew all the money from the account. So,
family.
Oh yes, family is always a they're the positive or the negative, one or the other. There's really doesn't seem to be much in between, right?
Yeah,
they're either on your side or they're not. But those types of things, you get just being aware of the potential implications of how your bank accounts, your investment accounts can be impacted.
So in that situation, had she called the holder of that account and said that my husband has passed, it would have stopped his brother from accessing it?
Potentially. That we don't have all the details as far as specifically what the ownership was. If it's a true joint account, there may not have been anything she could have done about it, simply because my understanding was she just wasn't aware of that this had actually happened.
Okay.
If it's a situation where, there may be many situations where the Social Security benefit recipient opens up a separate account because they may say, I don't need the money, so I'm just going to build my Social Security up and let it grow, earn interest. Right. They might open up an individual account for that purpose.
Right.
In this case, for whatever reason, he chose to open up a joint account. And so if it's joint ownership, it is joint ownership. And there's maybe not much she could have done about it, other than, again, depending on the type of ownership and state rules and different things like that.
Right.
Had she been aware of it and notified the bank, yes, there might have been a hold put on that account with one of the owners being deceased. So you just never know, but it's just something to be aware of.
Right. Okay.
So again, make sure you secure financial accounts. If necessary, cancel or transfer health insurance coverage, depending on what type of coverage, or whether you're on Medicare or you're on employer provided coverage. Again, part of that may be notifying Social Security. Part of that may be notifying the employer, depending on, again, your specific situation. But actually, if you're paying for Medicare, you're paying Medicare Part B premium, and you're notified, then as soon as reasonably possible, so that you don't keep paying premiums that you don't use.
Right.
So that's one of those, again, kind of those unknown details that you want to be aware of. So talking about that, like I said, I know people are going to kind of kick back on or have disagreements around what you should do with your accounts, especially their joint ownership, of saying, hey, well, you don't want to close your accounts. You don't want to notify them because they may limit your access to your accounts. And to a certain extent, that may be true. Again, it's all about what the actual ownership is, what the state rules are. So there are some other variables that you're going to want to be aware of based on your specific circumstances. But one of the things you want to be aware of is that in most cases, if it is a joint held bank account, or maybe even like a safe deposit box, you do actually want to make sure you have access to those accounts, because you're going to most likely need them. It may be for the funeral expenses. It may be for some other things that you're going to need that money for. But if your spouse had an individually titled account, it also then is going to be dependent on in terms of your access. Did that account have a beneficiary designation? Did it have a payable on death agreement? If so, you may be able to access those accounts relatively quickly. And that can potentially be a good solution. So if it's only owned by the deceased as an individual owner, but they had a payable on death to the spouse, in most cases, it may just be as simply as providing a copy of the death certificate, and then that money can be accessible to you.
Let me ask a question about the joint account. If you have a joint account with your spouse and your spouse passes away, can you just, and I guess maybe this is, per bank, but can you just, remove him from the account, or would you have to open up a whole new account?
It depends on depends on the type of ownership. So you're going to have
Okay.
different types of joint. You've got community property ownership. You've got joint with rights of survivorship. You've got different joint tenancy. So there's some, and again, that's way too deep for this particular conversation, but you want to
Well, I was talking
understand.
about bank accounts, really. I mean, but that's included as well.
Right. So so in terms of access, you would contact your bank. That's why I feel like, contacting your bank very
Just
early
ask
on in the
them.
process. So you don't end
Yeah.
up unexpectedly losing
Right.
access based on whatever rules they may have.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's where it's really, again, I feel like it's important to notify them because you just don't know what you don't want to be caught by surprise and saying all of a sudden, I just don't have access to money.
Right, for
So
sure.
you've got, and in certain financial institutions may offer what's called a simple affidavit form that you might be able to use that to transfer the funds. Because if any of those options are not available, you might actually have to wait to go through the probate process, especially if it's an individually owned account. And actually, in that case, you're going to have to consult an estate planning or a probate attorney in order to get that account resolved.
And that can take a long time.
It can. And that is a great example of why estate planning is such a big aspect here, because planning ahead of time can make a huge difference. We actually had a client, we'll just, as we always do, we'll call her Sue. She and her husband had just completed their estate plan within a matter of months before he passed away.
Oh.
It actually turned out that he had it was just an accumulation of stuff, some different investment accounts in this case, of different employer stock accounts that he had. So whether it's stock purchase plans or the other different things, he had 3 or 4 different stock accounts, but only he was named on those accounts. He was the only owner, and they didn't have beneficiary designations.
Oh.
Right. So the fact that they had gone through that estate planning process in advance, accessing those funds was much less of a mess than it could have been. Right. So not only did she could she have avoided going through probate in that case, she also was able to get access to those relatively quickly. She got the letters of testamentary. She went through the whole process. So she was able to eventually get those. But had she just had, again, as simple as a beneficiary designation, it would have been a much quicker process rather than going through the probate process.
Right. Exactly. Got it.
So for her, what actually ended up being an advantage in that she was able to get a step up in basis. Once she got the account settled, she got a step up in basis, which is from a tax perspective, just meant she had a much more tax advantage opportunity to sell the shares. For her, she actually was able to pay off the mortgage during a time actually when cash flow could have been pretty tight otherwise. So again, it's just a matter of planning ahead, whether you're using beneficiary designations or just making sure you get that estate plan done, have the will, have those important documents in place.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, it's one of the things that, I don't know if you've seen this in your past or not, but one of the things that happens, unfortunately, it's not uncommon for widows to feel some level of resentment after a spouse passes, feeling like they were left alone with everything to deal with.
Yeah.
And that feeling can be compounded when there's disorganization, there's financial burdens that are left behind that could have been avoided with more planning or maybe even just more communication. And again, we've seen some of these situations, and again, with clients that we've dealt with, where not only is there the emotional component of losing the spouse, but now there's hey, well, why did you do that? Why did this happen? Why did that happen?
Right.
Actually, I gave an example earlier about, the husband had a joint account with the brother and the brother took all the funds out of there.
Right.
You don't have answers. So the planning aspect is so huge, and the communication aspect can be huge as well.
Well, that's the other thing. You don't want to. I can imagine there's a resentment if there's a whole bunch of mess left behind when it could have been avoided. And you're like, why would you leave me like this? Why would you leave me this mess?
Right. And it's not necessarily, in many cases, it's not necessarily one spouse to blame versus the other. It's, hey, we didn't do this together, but now I'm the one left holding the bag and trying to figure out how to sort it all out.
Yeah.
And again, that's on top of the emotions of losing the husband. And again, we never know what the circumstances are around the passing. Was it somewhat expected or was it completely by surprise? Neither is a pleasant situation. Exactly. But then you're compounding things by the financial stress that can come along with that.
Yep.
So now let's talk about some of the essentials, just keeping the essentials running. Actually, you want to make sure that you try to keep up with the essential bills, your mortgage payment, your utilities, being aware of anything that's on auto pay or even things that might not be on auto pay. And again, this is where advanced communication really comes in, of knowing what your financial situation is. How are things getting paid? We touched on this a little bit earlier in terms of just making sure dependents and pets are cared for. It just might be, sometimes it's just arranging temporary support, or having to adjust your routines of having a family member come over and check on the dogs or the cats, whatever it might be. Here's a couple of things that again may surprise people. Don't cancel digital and phone accounts like emails. Don't cancel those things. Like, don't cancel the phone service, because if you lose, there's maybe things that you need access to, whether it's contact information,
Oh,
it's
okay.
text messages, it's emails, anything like that that you might need access to. Don't cancel those. You'll just immediately start canceling things like that.
Right, because you might need to go back in and look for some old
Right.
information.
And it might be things as simple as photos, banking
Mm,
logins, stuff that, if all your stuff is connected to your spouse's email address, and you
yeah,
cancel it, and all of a sudden I don't know what's what. Right.
right.
So those are a couple of things that really catch people by surprise, that again, if you can be aware of it in advance, just think about that. Don't cancel those digital or phone accounts sooner than you necessarily need to, so you still have access to that information.
Okay.
As best you can, you want to also assess some of your immediate cash needs.
Mm.
Just kind of get an idea of where things are at, because actually you've got funeral expenses, you've got living costs. Um, if you need to, you may need to request a temporary distribution from your investment or retirement accounts. If you're not certain of what the income situation is, again, some of this is just being aware, uh, being part of these conversations earlier, sooner rather than later. But if you're not sure, just know what your options are.
Mm-hmm.
This is also a good time to be sure you review the checklist and the guide, which again includes that section to help you list out some of the important contacts, insurance policies, account numbers. Again, whether you're doing this now or planning for the future, these worksheets will serve something like a roadmap for helping you get organized and gathering all the right information.
So is this something that like I could fill out and leave for, because I do all the bills and handle all the money, like put down account numbers and passwords and all that stuff, and I can make sure, okay, this is where it is. If something were to happen to me, this is where you go for it.
Exactly. So that's really what the guide is for. Basically it's section by section. First section is basically what we just went through. What happens in the first week or few days after a spouse passes away, or any related body passes away. Then we got, in our next episode, we're going to cover what do you need to do in the next few weeks, the next month or so.
Okay.
Then we've got, what about the next year? What are the things you need to be aware of over the next year? And then some additional considerations that we've thrown in there just for, again, individual circumstances. But then the final sections are contact information, bank accounts, life insurance policies, gathering the documents that either, again, it's great in your case when you say, hey, let's put this together in advance. So if something happens to me, something happens to him, I'm
Right.
prepared. Unfortunately, that's always not the case, of course.
Yeah.
But it can also serve as, okay, my spouse has passed away. I need to start gathering. How do I start? What do I need to gather? And so
Mm-hmm.
it can serve in that capacity as well.
All right. Sounds good.
So before we wrap up, I just want to go through just a few of the takeaways, because if you've just lost your spouse, here's some things you want to focus on within that first week or so, within the first few days. I didn't really touch on this at the beginning, but take care of yourself emotionally. Lean on your support system. That's obviously crucial. Make sure that these essential bills, accounts, living needs are covered. Uh, Begin the process of documentation. Again, we talked about the death certificates and the importance of those, legal and financial notifications. Just know that joint accounts are usually accessible, but individually titled accounts may require some additional steps. Again, this is where our guide is going to help you organize what's important. And again, don't be afraid to ask for help, whether that's actually close family, friends, hopefully if you've got a professional, you got different professionals in your life that you have the confidence to reach out to them and say, hey, I hate telling this story, but because it always makes me tear up. But one of those emails that we got, it's been probably over a year ago, and the subject was something terrible has happened.
Oh.
And it was just her letting us know. And this is within 24 hours. I felt, actually, you feel a level of that you've done something right when they feel comfortable enough to send you that message that quickly, because they know
Right.
they're going to need help. But you don't want to see that. You don't want to get those messages, right?
No, of course not.
But you want
No.
to make sure that if it's not somebody, if you don't have that professional, you don't have the financial advisor, the attorney, reach out to whoever your support system is. Hopefully it's friends, family, but make sure you have somebody on your side and help. And because oftentimes they can help you with some of these items too. Again, don't feel like you got to take up all on your shoulders because you're not going to be emotionally prepared to do so.
Right.
Again, that's why this guide can be so handy, because it's for you, it's for the people around you to help start gathering these documents, putting these pieces together.
Yeah. Sounds good.
So before we wrap up, anything else you'd want to add? Anything that you've experienced in your life that would add something to this? Is it anything you think I missed?
I think you covered it very well. All right.
Perfect.
All right.
Well, as always, thank you guys for tuning in. Big thanks to Wendy, as always, for joining me on this important episode. If you or someone you love is in the early days of widowhood, please download this free guide, Navigating Life After Loss, a comprehensive guide for the newly widowed. Again, it's going to be available in the episode summary, either at the website, thesimplyretirementpodcast.com, or whatever your podcast platform of choice is going to be. Please be sure to like, follow, and share the show. Again, especially if you know someone who may be going through this process right now. And until next time, please remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It's the start of a new journey.
That's it for today's episode of the Simply Retirement Podcast. We hope you found our insights and advice helpful in planning for a fulfilling retirement. Don't forget to take action on what you've learned today. Visit our website at blakewealthmanagement.com to learn more about our firm and review our Simply Retirement Roadmap process to get you on the right path to the retirement you deserve. And don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and we look forward to helping you achieve your retirement goals. Remember, retirement is not the end of the road. It is the start of a new journey. So embrace it and make the most of it. Until next time, take care. Content here is for illustrative purposes and general information only. It is not legal, tax, or individualized financial advice, nor is it a recommendation to buy, sell, or hold any specific security, or engage in any specific trading strategy. Results will vary. Past performance is no indication of future results or success. Market conditions change continuously. This commentary reflects the personal opinions, viewpoints, and analyses of Blake Wealth Management. It does not necessarily represent those of RFG Advisory, their clients, or their employees. This commentary should not be regarded as a description of advisory services provided by Blake Wealth Management or RFG Advisory, or performance returns of any client. The views reflected in the commentary are subject to change at any time without notice. Advisory services offered by investment advisory representatives of RFG Advisory, a registered investment advisor, Blake Wealth Management, and RFG Advisory are unaffiliated entities. Advisory services are only offered to clients or prospective clients where RFG Advisory and its representatives are properly licensed or exempt from licensure. No advisory services may be rendered by RFG Advisory unless a client agreement is in place.